Well, good morning, everybody. First thing I want to show you today is just a radar animation of Hurricane Milton. So what we're doing is we're stitching together all of the local radars that are down in this part of the southeast and mainly around Florida. So you can see several of the centers of the radars and some of the ground clutter around them. The hurricane crossed very quickly after making landfall last night. Quite powerful hurricane. Notice how dry the southern side was versus the northern side, which was extremely well forecast by the models. We had been forecasting this area to have the greatest amount of flooding. I'm waiting on some official numbers on just how strong it was at landfall. I want to wait till later today to see the official reports. But the reality of where this hurricane struck was absolutely critical to where the greatest storm surge and damage was going to be. Now, it's not an overlooked part of this hurricane, but a major part of this hurricane was this outer band as you watch it restart here again. We talked yesterday about the risk of the severe weather, the storms that were going to orbit this hurricane and their potential for rotating, producing supercells that made tornadoes. And we can see here from our storm reports that we had 45 reports of tornadoes and just numerous. The National Weather Service out of Miami, just as an example, was issuing tornado warning after tornado warning last night for this whole area. And we did see, I'm sure you saw some of this on the news or wherever you follow kind of the events like this, just the tremendous amount of rotation in these storms, the large tornadoes that it produced. I think that's something that's going to be studied in depth about Milton. It's just the sheer size of the tornadoes that were produced in these supercells. Normally we get these, they're almost like water spout type things or land spouts out of out of hurricanes. But instead, these were quite substantial. Taking a look now at the rainfall totals, let's get an update on this. There we go. We do see that stripe through this area of 10 to 12 inches is showing up quite clearly here on radar, but the dryer to the south, the dryer to the north, the cutoff on the northern edge by the models, I think it did a good job. So overall, we have to step back and say, how well did we forecast this system? Its initiation was very poor. In other words, last Friday, we still only had a 50% chance of development. But once the system developed, I think the National Hurricane Center did an absolutely incredible job. Their forecast track was only off by, I think it was 10 miles at the most, as it came through this part of Florida, making landfall, just as we talked about right in through here yesterday. That was where most of the models aligned. Right now, this morning in Florida, we're tracking 3.2 million people without power, and this is going to continue to be, a challenge over the coming days, given that we've poured a lot of resources, like our trucks, our linemen that are up in parts of Georgia, North and South Carolina, still repairing our regions, all the power outages in that region. We're going to have to redistribute a lot of that network down here. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of men and women who are putting in, 100+ hour weeks to get things cleared out. And it's an amazing thing, honestly, the amount of people that come out and put in that work and effort to restore things. And but I just wanted to show you what it looks like right now in terms of these power outages. Now, what was interesting was last night, I was primarily following this via Twitter. I don't really watch a whole lot of news and television and things like that. And so I was just watching some of my trusted folks on Twitter, and I noticed that several were reporting, I should have tuned into the Weather Channel to see what those guys do. They always put somebody right in near this thing. But I did note that the winds, as the hurricane came on shore, were definitely blowing out of Tampa Bay. And I saw a few reports of the water just getting kind of ripped out of Tampa Bay. And again, we were probably 20 miles away from this is not to say that Milton was a disaster, but just a huge disaster had Milton gone to the north of Tampa. But as it stands, the wind speeds around this were quite strong, carrying hurricane force winds far inland. And then, of course, this morning, continuing as it's now left the coast. It made it across very quickly, as you saw in the first animation. And if we just kind of get a quick sense of the timing here, this made landfall at about 0Z, and it was gone in the center. So it took 7 hours to cross. 7 hours from when the hurricane's eye hit this part of Florida right here. And then when it left, it was at 7 hours. So incredible just to watch how quickly this moved across. Now, given that Milton is out to open ocean and we're going to begin the cleanup effort, I do need to discuss with you if there is any additional tropical development that we need to be looking out for. We have a system that's out ahead of Milton that Milton will interact with. We have Leslie. We have the potential for another system, about 10% showing up here. And I'll be curious to see if the National Hurricane Center begins to watch that same Caribbean, Central American gyre again as we get later into the month of October. So this is what I'm going to keep a close eye on. If you remember about 3 weeks ago, maybe a bit more than that, we began to talk that this is one of those years where the Caribbean gyre or the Central American gyre had this high potential in September and October to generate storms. And we've now seen 2 out of this area, and we need to be watching for a third. Right now, we're only looking at about a 40 to 50% chance of development in the next 10 days here. But we still have not really done much to disrupt this entire area, pulling it away from, for example, the warm ocean temperatures that could stop, shut down the hurricane season. Wind shear will be a major factor going forward, but just want to tell you that we're going to watch this continually. From there, back to the rest of the U.S., very cold morning in parts of southern Michigan, getting into Ohio, West Virginia, parts of Pennsylvania, New York, and other sections of the Northeast. Had some much colder air that's kind of dipped through on a front. Behind it's a big warm-up. We're going to be watching temperatures, for example, in Iowa get well into the 80s behind this. Got some air quality issues around the country here. In fact, one thing I didn't pull up, let's go pull this up. I go to College DuPage. It's one of my favorite websites. And I'm just going to kind of give you the national view. So sun's trying to rise in the middle section of the U.S. Yesterday, you can see more wildfires, parts of Wyoming. Some of them that were in the northwest are kind of masked here by an upper-level cloud field. But this was just as the sun was setting yesterday. But behind this, right here, there is a cold front that has snuck through and really dropped temperatures off in the east. But the bigger event in terms of bringing cold air farther to the south is coming early next week. And so this will be one of the big topics we're going to cover here in just a few moments. This is the risk of frost over the next 7 days as forecast by the National Digital Forecast Database. So a reminder, when I make this map, what I am doing here is I'm looking for any temperature being forecast by the National Digital Forecast Database that is 34 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. And that is because, I taught my son this last night. I was driving him home late from soccer practice. The sun had set, and we drive through a little bit of hilly area, and we rolled down all the windows, and I said, now watch this. When we come off of this little hill and we drive into this valley, it's probably an elevation change of 25 feet. Put your hand out the window and just feel how cool it gets. The temperature can drop 7-8 degrees in just the span of, a quarter-mile drive if you go downhill. And he was like, wow, that's amazing. I said, now watch, we're going to go up the other side of the hill and it'll warm up again. And I said, in the morning, if we had high enough dew point in those areas, we'd get these little valley fogs. Even though Illinois doesn't have much elevation change where we live, we can still see that. And he's fascinated by it. And I felt like I was a good dad teaching him something like that. But anyways, that's the reality. That's why I set the value at 34, is because I'm watching for the reality that those low-lying areas get the cold air drainage, cold air being more dense, and you can drop the temperatures off. Okay, the other part of it is just where's our precipitation coming in the next 7 days. So this is the latest update from the WPC. You're noticing not a whole lot of difference. We have a system coming through here we'll talk about, getting into the northeast and eastern Canada, and a frontal boundary hitting the west coast. Midsection of the country, we're waiting. We're still waiting on this pattern to evolve. And what we're waiting on is a breakdown of this. Now, this is just a view into North America, okay? We've had multiple troughs. Remember, I feel like you're probably sick of me saying this, that have started here, come into the Gulf of Alaska and run up. They've then kind of made a dive into here. And this ridge has been just a major part of the pattern, and it was very well forecast. We had a pretty good look at the end of September and the front half of October, knowing that feature was going to be there overall in the pattern. But if we step back and look at the global pattern, I want you to see kind of how things line up. So for example, every single one of these large areas in the subtropics, okay, getting toward the mid-latitude and eventually the high-latitude regions, each one of those is sitting on top of kind of an epicenter of heat. Now, you know how hot it's been in the west. We've seen those temperature records. Here's the other epicenter of heat, and then there's another one here. We've talked about that one being in parts of Russia. And so my point is we're going to be watching this pattern begin to shift around. Look way upstream from North America. We're going to watch for any changes here or any changes here in this overall pattern that could be disruptive going forward. Now, I apologize. I make my maps centered on the prime meridian rather than the international date line. It's just a choice I made. But here's some big differences. Let's see if we can line these things up. Look at this. See this here? If I take you back, you'll notice that in that area, south of the Aleutian Islands, that's where we are, okay, that over the last, from the equinox until now, we've been kind of in a transition zone here. But now you start to notice that we're maybe digging a little bit of a deeper trough where there has been higher pressure. Bermuda High still here, but take a look at this large area of low pressure that's now from Greenland through Iceland over toward Scandinavia. And if you go back, okay, we had a big ridge there. We're expanding this trough, which means there are the beginnings of a pattern shift here that I think will be critical going forward. Now, I got asked, and this is a good question, why do I always use the artificial intelligence forecast model when I show you the 500 millibar heights? There's two reasons for it. I love the ensembles. I mean, I've built a forecasting career off of using those ensembles well. One of the things the ensembles do is they get the large spread when you get out there beyond about day 10, and it tends to wash out signal. This doesn't have an ensemble. The second thing is that the skill score of the artificial intelligence has been about 3 to 5% higher than the other models. And I've found that, and I hope you agree with me, that at times it's picked up on signals that other forecast models have not. So I'm going to keep using it until it really blows up and doesn't work. I'm excited for when the AI has an ensemble as well. So where are we? We're on Monday. Remember I was talking about the wave break here? This is the trough that's coming in that's going to be delivering that frost event we're going to take a closer look at here in a few moments. As we get past it, the ridge opens up, so we get a rebound in temperatures. But this, October 16th, that's new. Now, what's new about it is that the trough is extending into the southwest. And that is a different look. We've not seen that look. We've had big ridging in this whole area. That's why I showed you that a moment ago. And as a result, this is going to start, it's October 18th. But we're looking at something that could finally start to open up the Gulf, bringing moisture back into this area. Because as this ridge moves over, just think about the flow. It's doing something like this in and around it. And this trough is doing something like that. So that helps to tap into Gulf moisture. And as this trough sweeps through, it lifts the air. That's what you're getting. You're getting what we call height falls. And the only way to get the height to fall is to bring in colder air. And the result of the colder air is to, out ahead of it, cause air to rise, which gives you condensation clouds. And that's why we watch for these transition spots between troughs and ridges, which is going to be a major topic of discussion for the next 6 months as we go into the cold season. But that's a different look. We've not seen this in a while. In fact, we've had record heat in the Southwest, and now I'm saying some of the models are dropping a trough over the Four Corners states, as early as, the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. So that comes through, and the pattern just starts to take on a little bit more of still amplified, but an active look. And we just need to see the result of that. So let's look at this a few different ways. This is the latest 7-day forecast for precipitation anomalies from the European model. Not much change, right? You can see the front coming in. So we are bringing in some wetter weather to Northern California, which needs it. I'll tell you about the precip coming through here in a few moments. But for most of this whole section of North America, we're not looking at wet. Now, by the way, this is a 0Z run, so this captured last night's rain. Okay, week 2. Do you remember how yesterday I showed you that it was the artificial intelligence that was the only model out there in week 2 that was showing wetter conditions in through here? The ensemble started to pick it up as well. So we would give the AI model about a day and a half advantage on finding this pattern change. Now, I want you to understand something. There's major failure points with all of this. We are resting, a lot of this thought process on, let's get an upload here. There we go. We're resting a lot of this thought process on this trough 210 hours from now, really making it through the flow, because right now this is being initiated somewhere over by Siberia. It's a part of a pattern that's going to evolve in the North Pacific and get into the Gulf of Alaska and then finally penetrate into the western U.S. In the event that this trends toward higher heights, we will blow this out and it will not manifest itself. So there is a failure mode in this we need to be able to watch for and understand. But overall, overall, we are seeing this look that trough could come through and deliver rain into some extremely dry areas and start to break this longer standing drought. Okay, let's see here. What did I want to show you on this? Let's go here. This is just the website, agweather.com. I want to go down here and I'm going to show you 7-day total precip. There we go. Now, remember, over the next 7 days, we don't have a lot going on other than a front coming in to the western U.S. and a system kind of going right over the Great Lakes into the Northeast. So let's kind of get in and see how this is going to evolve. European model today is what I'm going to focus on. So as we play this forward, getting into Friday and Saturday. Can you see the first front right there coming through like part of the Great Lakes into Ontario? That curls up into a low into parts of the Northeast. Then you can see the front. See it coming into Northern California? There it is. That's coming in on Friday night, Saturday morning. And then at that point on Sunday, this is where the big wave break is taking shape, building high pressure underneath it here. So we'll put an H. And there is a deeper trough that's coming in like this, creating a broader area of upper level low pressure in this region. So as you watch this, this is Sunday getting into Monday and Tuesday. There's the high that forms. This is the risk of the cold air. There's the low out ahead of it, bringing in the flow from the north, possibly interacting with enough moisture to make some precip in this area. And we will be talking about the chances for some snow out of this in this region as well. Now, if you just go back to the western U.S., we have another front that comes in. When is this? This is out there about a week from now, Thursday, October 17th. And that is the beginning of that trough feature that should open things up in the Midwest. Now, did you see it all transition? So watch this. The high pressure cell that I said formed here moves over to the mid-Atlantic. Air flows around a high like this. Look at this pressure gradient forming in here. So you see it? So I drew a line orthogonally to it, but the pressure lines are here. That's going to drive a very strong wind into this area, but it's going to open up the Gulf of Mexico. And as this low starts to move in there, it's going to tap into that. And that's what we're seeing in the forecast models. And what this could do is have enough cold air in it to be putting down some snow in the Rocky Mountains. So let's kind of stitch all of it together. I mentioned snow. You want to see it? This is the European model solution on the snow. So here is some here. And as we go forward, that's that low that comes in at the end of the time period when 17th, 18th, 19th, and it's going to be putting down some decent snow into the Rockies. Now, the GFS is a bit more aggressive on this. It's got snow. Look at that. I mean, this is ski country up here, possibly coming in late this weekend into early next week. Here it is, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. See that? And it's been the most aggressive model in this, and I'm just going to remind everybody, whenever you start to see the first snow forecast being made by the models in fall, they almost always get it wrong. Now, we'll watch it to be seeing how this works, but just want to let you know, the thing I'm more convinced about is the chances for snow improving here with the second system that comes in, again, the 17th, 18th, and 19th. Now, you see some big snows up in Canada. You see more snow in the northern Rockies getting into, here around Calgary, for example. But we just got to be careful with these snowfall forecasts this early in the season. Plus, I'm 288 hours out. So please, I shouldn't have done that. But we'll be watching them anyway. I will show you, though, that it is in the ensembles as well. This is the 10-day probability of getting an inch of snow. So there are chances at high elevation here. There's even chances in the UP. But there's much bigger chances down the spine of the Rockies, maybe in the Cascades and Sierra Nevada as well. But what's important about this whole thing is the other models have now caught up to the AI. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just vetting that AI model. I want to make sure you see that I'm not promoting it. We're just testing it. Because it showed something like this yesterday. And now the Europeans picked up on it. You can see the wetter signals here in the GFS. And even the CPC has started to make that shift. All right. Now, back over to the temperature side of this. Let's watch these minimum temperatures. This was this morning, so we can see where our frost event was. Big warm up in the central U.S. Major cool down east. Still cool in the southeast while the heat spreads. Now watch. Sunday to Monday. That's the first push of this cold air. There's where our frost event will be Monday morning. Tuesday morning, there's the frost line. Now that's an actual 32-degree line, not the 34 that I used in the frost potential map. And there's Wednesday. Big time cool down coming with that breaking wave going through Canada. High temperatures, as I said before this gets here, just hot. We're 90s in parts of Nebraska today, cool up the East Coast. There's tomorrow, there's those mid-80s I mentioned into parts of Iowa. Then we get into Saturday, Sunday, here comes the cooler air. Monday, Tuesday. So that's the big event with this. Did you notice, by the way, that California could be a bit cooler as the frontal boundaries come in through here this week, late this week and this weekend too, where we saw some of that rain. But where we finish next Wednesday, much cooler here. So just as an example, it will be cooler next Wednesday in Atlanta than it will be in eastern Montana. Just amazing to kind of see those differences. Okay, bigger picture things. I mentioned some wind. I did want to show you that some of the models are becoming a bit more aggressive. Let's reload that. There we go. On these winds as that front comes through. So maybe some 40, 50 mile an hour gusts ahead of the system that's coming on the 17th and 18th. So I just want you to see that we could be seeing that risk in this area. And then from there, let's just make sure we look out there at the longer term temperature pattern. Now this is what's quite interesting. Day 10 through 15, the European ensemble and the GFS ensemble are both showing significant cool downs here. And if that's the case, you're going to have a trough in that area. There's no way around it. Now, these cooler conditions have not been here in a while. It's been looking more like this, right? The troughs have been here, going into British Columbia, leaving a large ridge, which is still dealing with for the next couple of days, 5 days at least. But out here in longer term, this would suggest troughs of low pressure finally working their way into the west. And that's one of the reasons why we're starting to see this better chance of having, the wetter weather in the central U.S. Now, I'll just say this, ahead of that, the dryness in this area is going to continue to give us this risk of rapid drought development, which we've taken a lot of look at lately. But the models continue to try to bring in better conditions toward the end of this month. So, for example, the new CFSV2 forecast out there for the last week of October, the beginning of November, has a wetter signal, and the European model is doing a very similar thing for most of November. Look at the change in the wet weather in the west, driving the troughs through, ejecting in the middle part of the United States. That'll push drier conditions toward the south and east and keep things wetter in this area. Now, if that happens and we start to rebuild some of the moisture profile here, it'll begin to offset these statistics. And this is the newest data that I've got. I mean, look at Nebraska. Look at parts of Iowa, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, this whole region. Lots of 132s. The Northeast still very, very dry. So good that we're getting some moisture in there. The Southwest, if those troughs drop through, we'll finally start to break this incredible temperature pattern. And if we do get this kind of flow, November could finally start to break the dryness in the Northwest into California, beginning to deliver that normal, a bit late, but that normal onset of precipitation in the western United States. We'll also start to work against the soil moisture issues we've got right now, which continue to expand in those really, really dry spots. And I'll also be able to see if the Mississippi River, if we can get some of that water in it, will stop its decline. This morning it was down to 1.36 feet below low stage. Still getting some drainage from Helene into the river. Now, speaking of rivers, I'm sure you've been hearing, we've kind of been talking about the overall dryness in the region, but we've now seen some reports that Brazil's Amazon River levels have gotten very low, 122-year low. Now, remember, October, November, climatologically is the low point on the river. So this is expected, but these values are very, very low in this area. We've noticed that, of course, the end of the dry season was extensive. It lasted all the way through September. But as I mentioned, we've begun to shove the flow in a different direction. Yesterday's satellite data, see the little pop-up convection, see the broader area of cloud cover. You can see the cloud streets coming around like this. That is monsoonal-like. And the models continue to show us, not here, but here, that the next 10 days has better chances of being wetter than average. The model's been very consistent with putting down precipitation throughout Brazil, and the GFS has been on board with this as well. Different amounts, these two models are vastly different when it comes to South American precipitation forecasting. It's very rare that they line up well. But overall, what it isn't is that it isn't dry. And I just think we need to take that into account as we continue to watch South America's planting progress. It may not mean a lot for this upcoming week's planting progress numbers, but the following weeks, the mid-October to late October, will be where we want to keep a close eye on things. So that's what I got for you today. I will talk to you again in the morning. Have a good one. Thank you.